would like to express our deepest gratitude for your presence at today's special event, hosted by Mowilex and supported by CNN Indonesia and Museum MACAN. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, allow us to extend our warmest greeting to our esteemed guest, CEO of Mowilex, Bapak Niko Safavi. Hello. And former President Director of Mowilex Indonesia, Ibu Lili.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mowilex supported by CNN Indonesia and Museum MACAN is proud to present Let Your True Color Shine Leadership Series by Mowilex. Once again, please give a big applause. Ladies and gentlemen, this campaign encourages individuals to explore their personal creativity and embrace the transformative power of color in all aspects of life. And today's event will feature several key agenda, including opening remarks and keynote speeches. Additionally, there will be engaging talk show season covering interesting topics, led by distinguished speakers who are expert in their field. And to begin this morning event, we are honored to present a special performance by our dear friend from Rawinala. Rawinala is a dedicated educational foundation that provides learning opportunity to children with multiple disabilities, particularly those with visual impairment. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please join us in welcoming Louis Bertrand by Rawinala.
I believe the children our future. Teach them well that they'll lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside of Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rawinala, for the wonderful performance. And it is truly sure that limitation should never be a barrier to achievement. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Rawinala. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the next agenda, the opening remarks will be delivered by the Chief Executive Officer of Mowilex Indonesia, Bapak Niko Safavi. But before that, please enjoy the video. Ladies and gentlemen, please give the warmest welcome to Bapak Niko Safavi.
Good morning, everyone. What an exciting day for us to have all of you here. We have a great program ahead for all of you. But before I get too far ahead on that, I hope you enjoyed the music. Rabinala is one of only 3 schools in Indonesia that helps children with multiple disabilities. And we've been a supporter of Rabinala since 2019, when our employees painted the school for them here in Jakarta. And their student performers have performed in our events in the past. So with that, I know we have suppliers, advisors, consultants. We pay you guys good money. But we also have students in the back, am I correct? Are there students in the back? We have a challenge for you. For you guys in the back, it's about the cost of 1 week's worth of iced coffees or lattes, etc. We would like to take this opportunity to raise funds for Rabinala. And we're asking you to pledge. If we can get the QR code up here on the stage, that'd be good. I'll step aside so you can bring it up. We're asking that you contribute to Rabinala today. And if we can get you to contribute 50 million rupiah, Mowilex will match 50 million rupiah. Our shareholders will match for 50 million rupiah. And I will match 50 million rupiah. So this is a chance to raise 200 million rupiah for Rabinala School. People in the front, we expect you to pay big, and people in the back, you can help too. So this is important, and I hope you contribute towards this. Next, my head of sales and head of marketing demand that I make this somewhat of a commercial. This is the part where you don't get to hit skip if you're on YouTube, and that gives you a clue about who else is on this program later today. A lot of you younger people, you may not know our brand, but your parents and grandparents certainly did. And it's important that you support and patronize us. We are the brand of the future. We do the things that is important to you. We look after the environment, we look after our people, and we govern our company in the best way that we possibly can. So it's absolutely important when you guys go back home in the back and you tell your parents, whose paint are they going to buy? All right, okay. And my marketing head, I think, thank you. I would be in trouble if we were not to mention all the things we do to make us really a contemporary, ethical organization in how we treat our employees, how we treat our environment, how we make sure that we back up our claims with certifications and work with our suppliers to make sure that all the things we do are the things that are important to you. We know that 86% of Indonesians under the age of 30 want to patronize brands that are ethical, and we certainly stand for that. That's the end of the commercial. In October of last year, at a school reunion event, I had the privilege of hearing our keynote speaker, and I knew immediately that we had to bring her here for you to hear. And we're not bringing here because she spent a good part of her childhood here in Jakarta, which she did. We're not bringing here only because she is an accomplished lawyer, a journalist, advised on M&A deals in banking, a consultant and advisor to a US senator, worked on representing professional athletes in the US in American football and basketball. We didn't bring here only because she's a world-class athlete and has had 5 world records, Olympic gold medal, Olympic bronze medal in 2 different Olympic events, numerous other championship awards, including Goodwill Awards, Goodwill Games Awards. We didn't bring here only because she's an advocate for women's rights and people with different abilities, which she does. She's also, make sure I get all this, but director of Swimming Australia, vice president of Paralympics Australia, and on the World Athletic Disciplinary Tribunal, and I think that speaks to your experience in law. An interesting factoid, if you've seen Mad Max 4, she's the stunt double for Charlize Theron. All of those, but mostly because she's an amazing storyteller. And so, please give a warm welcome to Annabelle Williams. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Niko, for that incredibly warm introduction. I am absolutely privileged to be here today. Not only because I have been invited by a wonderful organisation and this is an incredible space with all of you fine people, but it is the first time I have been back to Jakarta since I was 10 years old. I have had an incredibly nostalgic couple of days visiting my home that I grew up in Kemang. And last night I was going through some photographs and I looked at these two photographs. I attended the British International School here in Jakarta, BIS, and I was on the basketball team. I was on the Celtics team at BIS, and for a couple of years I thought that meant that I was one day going to play for the Celtics. And I remember when I was in this team, I was the only girl in the team and the only person with a disability. And one day at training, I overheard two parents speaking to our coach, Alex. And they said that I shouldn't be on the team because, well, I was a girl and I had a disability. My coach, Alex, saw that I had overheard that conversation, and in the middle of the parents' pleadings, he cut them off, came straight over to me. He looked me in the eye and he said, "In my opinion, you are the best member of this team because you are the best problem solver I know." And with that, we carried on training, and my coach, Alex, went and spoke to my classroom teacher during the course of that week. Her name was Miss Mogford, and he arranged for my entire class to come and support me at the game that weekend. And it is that kindness that I experienced time and time again during my time in Jakarta. They were incredibly formative years when I was here. It was where I developed my passion and love of sport, and specifically swimming. It was where I developed a love of language, although my Bahasa is terrible, and my love of other countries and other cultures. So thank you again for having me back here today. I was very lucky to have been born into a family that never saw my disability as a problem. I was born without my left hand and forearm. And having lived with a disability for 36 years, I have developed grit and resilience and a growth mindset. But I'm strongly of the view that I have developed those things because of the challenges I've faced in my life and the incredible support I've had along the way. And that's what I'm going to speak to you about today. How to empower this thing called a growth mindset through grit and determination. And one of the most essential aspects of those things is support from others. When I was growing up, I knew that I was different to other people. But I very clearly remember the day I learned that I was disabled. It was my first ever swimming competition. And as I entered the aquatic centre, there was a banner at the entrance. On the banner, it said, "This event is being organised by the Sports Council for the Disabled." And I remember looking at the word disabled, thinking, I wonder how that relates to me. Nobody had ever called me disabled. So I went home and I took out my trusty dictionary and I looked up the word disabled. And this is what I saw. Words like challenged, impaired, halt, lame, immobile, ailing, sick, diseased. I took the dictionary downstairs and as I started reading these words out loud to my parents, this lump lodged in my throat. And I said to my mum and dad, "Am I sick?" am I not whole? And my mum, who would never normally do this because she loves books, I remember she pried the dictionary out of my hand, tore that page out and threw it in the garbage bin. And then she sat me down on our couch and she said with stern conviction, "It does not matter what is written in that book. You will only ever be constrained by your mindset." It was this incredibly pivotal lesson for me from somebody I loved and trusted. The phrase had not been coined back then, but what my mum was instilling in me was this idea of a growth mindset. It has since been coined by a Stanford professor called Carol Dweck, and a growth mindset is the basic belief that with effort and hard work, and importantly, support from other people, we can achieve so much more than we ever thought we could. And it's contrasted to a fixed mindset, where people believe that no matter how much effort and hard work they put in, nothing will change their situation. And so my mum was instilling in me this very healthy idea of a positive growth mindset. She was saying, don't see yourself in those fixed terms. The way you see yourself is the way other people will see you. And from that moment forward, I always wanted to be seen as the antonyms to the word disabled. Things like fit, healthy, hearty, robust, well, whole, and wholesome. But then, of course, there was school, where that idea was challenged on a pretty regular basis. I started my primary schooling back in Australia, and this photo was taken on my very first day of kindergarten. On my return from Indonesia, I went back into my final year of primary school. And one day, well, there was a boy. On the grounds that it might incriminate him, I probably should not tell you his name, but I will. This boy's name was Todd Jackman. Yeah. And Todd was like the fastest runner in our whole school. He was the best soccer player, the best basketball player. He was like an alpha 10-year-old. And one day, Todd asked me if I would sit next to him the next day at lunch. And as a 10-year-old, that is as close as you get to being asked out on a date. And so, of course, when lunchtime came around, I forced all of my girlfriends to sit in a circle close by, and Todd forced all of his guy friends to sit in a circle close by. And Todd and I sat between these two groups, having what I imagine was an incredibly awkward conversation. But lunch itself was fine. Lovely, in fact. But at the end of lunch, Todd stood up, and in front of everybody in the playground, as loudly as he could, he said that he would never sit next to me again because he thought I was so weird for only having one arm. And a comment like that hurts at any age, let alone when you're 10 and already feel pretty different. I still remember exactly how I felt on that day. I remember looking around and it felt like the whole playground had just frozen. Nobody moved. Everyone was just staring at me. I could feel my face getting hot and flushed and my eyes welling up with tears, and I looked down at my scuffed shoes and just wanted to dissolve into the asphalt. I went home that evening and I told my parents, I said, I'm never going back to school again. I couldn't face it. I felt like Todd had voiced how everybody actually felt about me. I thought all these people are just pretending to be my friends, including me out of pity, but really they see me as this outlier. Or as Todd said, a weirdo. My grandmother, who taught me so much about resilience, she was widowed at the age of 25 with 2 young children, my mum and my uncle. I remember she said to me, "You have to go to school tomorrow. We can't run away from our fears. Sometimes we have to face things, even if we don't think we can." And the next morning, my grandma, who I called Momo, she walked me to school. And just as I was about to go through the gate, she knelt down and she gave me 2 kisses. She gave me one kiss and said, "This kiss gives you our love." And then she gave me another kiss and said, "This kiss gives you the courage to be brave." And I remember slinking through the gate, feeling so vulnerable. I went straight to my classroom and sat down at my desk. My teacher, whose name was Miss Clark, she had no doubt heard what had happened the day before in the playground. She didn't come and speak to me directly, and to my knowledge, she didn't go and speak to Todd. She stood at the front of our classroom and said, for the first exercise of the day, we were going to do a creative activity. She said, "I want you all to draw your version of a superhero." And then she said, "But every single superhero has to have a disability." And by the end of the class, there were 25 superheroes that all had one arm. 25 superheroes who all looked exactly like me. And Miss Clark hung those pictures at the front of our classroom for the rest of the year. And every morning I would swan past Todd and gaze at these pictures of superheroes that looked like I did. That was another incredibly pivotal moment for me. Miss Clark was a very clear example of a sponsor in a business context. She saw an opportunity to help someone in a vulnerable position, and she took it. And she did it in the kindest and most inclusive way I can think of. She was saying, "Ignore what happened yesterday in the playground. That's not at all how we see you. To us, you're a superhero." And so as a young person, I started to build my confidence thanks to people like Miss Clark. I felt like I was constantly building this team of people around me, my neighbours, my teachers, my parents and extended family, my friends, who saw that the things that were happening to me because of my disability had the potential to really drag me down. But they helped to build me up. Every challenge I was presented, and there were challenges on a daily basis, was met in equal measure with the love and the support and the encouragement from this team. And I felt like I wasn't alone. And that was a huge deal for me when I felt so different to every one of my classmates. The other thing that gave me a huge amount of confidence as a young person was sport. I tried every single sport. You know, ironically, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm pretty certain the only sport I have never tried is soccer, which is the only sport that doesn't require hands. But I've tried every other sport. And as I got older, I had to pick just one, and that sport was swimming. I'm privileged to have been on the Australian team for 8 years. And the extent to which a person can have a growth mindset was made apparent to me on my very first day at the Paralympic Games. My first Paralympics was in Beijing in 2008. And on the first day, at lunchtime, I went into the dining hall. And the dining hall at an Olympic and Paralympic Games is the stuff of legend. It's the size of 10 football fields. There is cuisine from every country on the planet. There's a McDonald's. It's amazing. And I had decided that I was going to sit next to somebody different every mealtime to meet as many people in this Paralympic community as I possibly could. And on this particular occasion, I got my tray of food and sat down. And I looked next to me, and there was a man wearing the Chinese team uniform. He was missing both of his arms at the shoulders, and in front of him on the table were three things: a laptop with the lid closed, a bowl of ramen, and chopsticks, which were still inside their paper holder. I looked at him, this man who had no arms, missing his arms at the shoulders, and I looked around to see if anyone was going to come and help. And when I realised that nobody was, I thought perhaps I could. And just as I was about to offer my assistance, I watched as this man put both of his feet on the table. With one foot, he flipped open the laptop and started touch typing, much faster than I can touch type with one hand. And with the other foot, he took the chopsticks out of their paper holder, snapped them in half, and started eating ramen. And that was an incredibly pivotal moment for me as well. I was the kind of person who had the tendency to underestimate myself, largely because I was so often underestimated by society. And here I was, underestimating what this man was capable of. And I can't imagine how many times he would have had to practice typing with one foot and eating ramen with chopsticks with his other foot. And he would have tried and failed and had to try again and failed again. But eventually he could do both those things, and he could do them simultaneously. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, I am never going to underestimate another person, and I am never going to underestimate what I am capable of either. And that was a very important lesson at a very important time. It was the eve of the biggest competition of my life. And it was moments like those in the Paralympic movement and at the Paralympic Games that have stayed with me my entire life. They have contributed to the grit and determination and growth mindset that I have tried to employ throughout my whole life. Niko kindly mentioned that I have had some wonderful successes as an athlete. I broke some records, I won some medals, and I was honoured to captain the Australian team for a period as well. But I also had a huge number of challenges as an athlete. And I'd love to share with you what was without doubt the most difficult race of my life. It came during those games in Beijing. It was the 50-metre freestyle. I was ranked first in the world. I was the record holder in that event. I'm sure many of you have watched swimming at the Olympics and Paralympics, but all of the athletes from all over the world compete in the heats in the morning. And then the fastest 8 qualifiers move through to the final in the evening. I posted the fastest time in the heat. I was the fastest qualifier going into the final. I had the centre lane, lane 4. And there's about 8 hours between the heats and the finals. And instead of doing all of the things that I had worked on for years with the sports psychologists and my coaches and trainers, instead of employing all the techniques and tools that they had worked with me on in order to perform in a very high-pressure environment, I remember spending 8 hours daydreaming about how my life would dramatically change when I won the gold medal. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit it, but I was so hopeful and so confident that I saw the gold medal as a sure thing. And I remember walking out onto pool deck that night and looking up into the crowd and seeing 15,000 odd people cheering and screaming, and I was completely overwhelmed. I remember looking at the pool and looked like it was kind of pulsating in front of me. I felt like I had a bird's eye view of what was happening, but I wasn't actually in my body. Everything started happening in slow motion, and I desperately wanted to go up to the starter and say, "Can we have 5 minutes to take in this whole situation? Don't start the race just yet." But of course, that's not how sport works. And before I knew it, the whistle had been blown and we were up on the blocks. I have no memory of that race, but I very clearly remember touching the wall and looking at the scoreboard and seeing that I had come fourth, 0.03 of a second behind the third place getter. And fourth is the worst place to come. I would rather have come last in that race. Knowing that I had missed out on the opportunity to stand on the podium and win a gold medal or a silver medal or a bronze medal for Australia was gut-wrenching. I felt like people had invested so much time and energy in me, and I had let them all down. I felt like I had completely failed. I had dedicated 4 years of my life to the pursuit of that one gold medal. And in less than 30 seconds, it was over. And I had bombed. I had totally failed. I remember pulling myself up out of the side of the pool and going over to the media zone and doing a few interviews. And then I found a change room nearby. I thought I just need to sit and collect my thoughts. And as I sat in the change room, which was empty, a couple of moments later, a woman came in. She had also been in that race. She had the same disability as me. She'd come 7th in that freestyle event. And I remember she sat down and put her arm around me and asked if I was okay. She could see that I was upset. And I said, "I'm fine, I'm just disappointed with that race." And then she asked me if my family was in Beijing. And I said, "Yes, my parents and my auntie and uncle are in the stands." And I remember she looked at me and with the kindest words and the kindest expression, she said, "You know, you just competed in the final at a Paralympic Games and your family is here to support you. You should feel so proud of yourself." And I knew she was right, but that was not at all how I felt in that moment. I was overwhelmed with this sense of failure. And I thanked her very much and we went our separate ways. I didn't know anything about her story at the time, but I learnt a few days later that she had acquired her disability in an accident a few years prior, and in the accident, both of her parents had been killed. And it was in that moment that I realised our failures, or our perceived failures, are actually our most defining moments. I still have no idea how she mustered the courage and the kindness to say what she did to me in that change room, but I will be forever grateful for the lesson she taught me about perspective. And it would have been incredible to have stood on the podium and won a medal, but I don't think I would have learnt as much as I did on that day from that woman. It was moments like that that I had every day during my time at the Paralympics, and I thought to myself, I desperately need to be part of this movement for longer. I had considered retiring after Beijing, but I thought, I can't retire now. This movement is too amazing. It was that, mixed with a little bit of redemption. I wanted redemption in the race. And that spurred me on for another 4 years to the London Paralympics in 2012. And it was during London that I experienced the greatest high I have ever been on in my entire life. It was the last event on the last day of competition. It was the women's 4x100 medley relay, and we, Australia, were ranked 5th going into the race, 5th. The 4 women in our relay, we were warming up, and right before the race, we went over to our coach. And I will never forget, he had the world's largest clipboard, this giant clipboard. And he had all sorts of documents attached to this clipboard, which had been highlighted and circled. And he said to us, in one of his less inspiring speeches, he said, "We've looked at all of the data, and if you guys all swim personal best times, so if the 4 of you swim faster than you've ever swum before in your entire lives, you have an outside chance of a bronze." Now, a bronze is fantastic, but nobody is racing for bronze. And then he said to us, a gold medal is going to be impossible, but you've got an outside chance of a bronze. And with that, we turned and went to the marshalling area. And one of the women in that relay team looked at me and she said, "I don't think a gold is completely impossible." And so with that, I'd like to show you a brief video.
Cole, Downey, Williams, Frenny, what a team. Team Australia, they go in lane number 2. Fredrickson away well and into a stroke, still underwater in lane number 2. It's Williams for Australia. Is the lead big enough over Australia? It could well be, unless 7 will dive in, but it is in the name of Jacqueline Frenny. The most successful swimmer in the pool is about to dive in now for Australia. Jacqueline Frenny is away. Kangasiva from the Russian Federation, hold on. I think the lead is going to be enough, but Jacqueline Frenny is absolutely charging. But so too is Wegerman, Mallory Wegerman in lane 5. This is going to be absolute drama down the last length. As the Russian Federation, Oksana Gasiva is being caught. Jacqueline Frenny could well run out of water. Look at Mallory Wegerman, 23 years of age. She's an S8, a class up on her rivals. This is going to be dramatic stuff now. There's 15 metres to go, and here comes Great Britain. Louise Watkin of Great Britain. They're all neck and neck now. There's 3 metres to go. It's a blanket finish. It goes to lane number 2. Oh my word, 4:53.95. I've not seen anything like that before. What drama in the pool. They cannot believe it. Australia from lane 2. The Paralympic champions, London 2012.
Thank you. You know, I spoke to my mum last night and I said, "I'm going to show the video." And she said to me, I might just go back to, I said, "I'm going to show the video tomorrow." And she said, "You know, your dad still watches the last 25 metres of that race every morning." It's been 14 years or something. I still watch that and I think, come on, Jackie, in that last 25 metres. But you know, we were 4 women, all with different disabilities, who had been told hundreds, probably thousands of times in our lives that something was impossible. The gold medal was impossible. We had an outside chance of a bronze, but a gold was impossible. And all the data and metrics and statistics that my coach had on his clipboard indicated that that was right. We couldn't win the gold medal. And I think data and metrics and statistics are very important, but I also think there's something else that is super important. Hope, determination, and the power of a really amazing team. I'm often asked if I wish I'd won an individual gold medal during my time on the team. That's often considered to be more prestigious in a sport like swimming. And my answer is absolutely not. I am so proud to have won that gold medal alongside those 3 women. It taught me so much about the richness of happiness when it's shared. And to have known too that if we hadn't had success in that race, we still would have put our arms around each other and said, well done, and how wonderful to have shared that moment in time together. And to me, that's the success. That's the success of any kind and inclusive team. Irrespective of the outcome, you feel safe and supported. I'm a huge believer that a champion team will beat a team of champions every time. My post-sport career has spanned the industries of law, sports administration, and more recently, television. And I sit on a couple of boards of directors now as well. And with that bird's eye view, I have come to learn that there is something that is universally true. The best employees, the best team members, the most hardworking, the most innovative, the most positive, they are the people who have had kindness extended to them. They're the people who have been nurtured and mentored and encouraged. And creating that culture of kindness can take real courage. My television journey started in the most unusual way. It was back in the early 2000s. I was swimming, and the National Swimming Championships is a competition in Australia that happens every year. Swimming is a huge sport, very popular in Australia, and that competition that goes for 1 week was always televised at prime time on a major television network. And we could watch people like Ian Thorpe. Have you heard of Ian Thorpe? He was probably our most outstanding swimmer. At 7 p.m. every night for 1 week. That national championships also doubled as the trials for the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, or the World Championships, whatever major event was on that year. What most Australians didn't know was during that exact same week, in the same swimming pool, at the same time, athletes with a disability were competing for national titles and trying to qualify for the Paralympics or the Commonwealth Games or the World Championships. But there was no opportunity to watch our races because we had to swim in the ad breaks. Our races were scheduled in the ad breaks. I will never forget qualifying for a Paralympics, breaking a world record and winning a national title, and watching an official come over to me while I was still in the pool. I thought she was coming over to congratulate me, but she looked down and she said, "Could you just hurry up and get out of the pool? The ad break's nearly over." We were treated like such second-class citizens. And there were a lot of us, a huge number of us, who thought that is grossly unfair. And it is interesting to watch athletes who have overcome significant challenges and gone on to be high performers. That resonates with people at home. That's inspiring. Able-bodied athletes, athletes with a disability, our parents, our coaches, we all started to talk about how we could create change, how we could advocate for change. And I cannot tell you how many times I was told, no one is interested in watching someone with a disability try and swim up and down a pool. And that was very hurtful, the first 10 or 20 times I was told that message. But then it was like water off a duck's back. I thought, oh, okay, you don't get it. I'm going to try somewhere else. And eventually I spoke to a new board member at Swimming Australia, and he said to me, "You're right, this is totally unfair. I'll create a meeting for you with the television network." I was incredibly naive. I was in my early 20s, and I went into this meeting with the executives of a major television network in Australia. I was the only woman, and I was the only person under the age of 65 in the room, and I pitched our idea, and I was basically laughed out of the room. Again, nobody is interested in watching people with a disability try and swim up and down a pool. And we went back, and I thought, instead of asking them to televise all our races, let's ask them to televise just one, a 50-metre freestyle. It'll take 30 seconds of the broadcast, and I will commentate the race so that the regular commentators don't have to learn all these new names. And it took some negotiating, but that's ultimately what happened. And that's right back in the early 2000s. Fast forwarding 15 years, after the Tokyo Paralympic Games, we won a Logie, which is Australia's most prestigious television award, for the most outstanding sports coverage. And when I reflect on that 15-year journey, from people telling us no one wanted to watch us on TV to winning Australia's most prestigious television award, it was not as if that journey was linear. It wasn't like every year we had more and more coverage. Some years it felt like we went 5 steps backwards, and then the next year, 2 steps forward. But the net result was incredibly positive. So from that story, I think there's 3 things that is really important. Taking a bird's eye view. Sometimes when you're advocating for something or trying to create change of any kind, it can be super frustrating, and that journey certainly was. But the net result was overwhelmingly positive. And I think it's very important not to lose sight of that. The other thing I think is super important is the power of a trailblazer. One person's ability to create massive change. That board director opened a door for us that led to television coverage. If that hadn't happened in that moment, I'm sure at some point we would have had television coverage, but it wouldn't have happened then. I think people often think there needs to be a whole system to change things. But my experience is that one person can create enormous change. And the third thing, and this is for the people at the back, the students, I think that age and seniority shouldn't matter. If you are passionate about something, if there is something you want to advocate for, if there is some change you want to see, make it happen. Be perseverant. Find new avenues, and you will make it. I'd like to share one final story with you. I'm going to take you back to the Beijing Paralympics. We had one whole day in Beijing after the swimming competition finished. And our head coach said to us, you can do whatever you want for this final day, which I thought was a bit of a high-risk strategy to say to a bunch of athletes who had done nothing but swim and train and eat for the previous 4 years. But nonetheless, we were given free rein. I had always roomed with a woman called Katrina. Kat and I had been roomies on every team for years and years and years, and we'd travelled together and trained together and had so many incredible experiences as Paralympians. And Kat had decided that she was going to retire after Beijing. So we knew this was our last opportunity to be on the same team. And Kat is in a wheelchair. So we thought, what would be really special is doing something together, just the two of us on that final day, our final Paralympic experience together. So we did a little bit of research, and we decided to go to a place called the Summer Palace. I'm sure some of you have been there, many of you would have heard of it. It is this incredibly majestic place on the outskirts of Beijing. So Kat and I jumped in a taxi and off we went to the Summer Palace. We arrived and went through these spectacular gates, down a long, long, long corridor, and we arrived at an opening. And it was at that point we realised we had not done enough research about where we were going, because the primary attraction of the Summer Palace is a temple called the Hill of Longevity, which is situated at the top of 1,000 stairs. And Katrina was in a wheelchair. Kat and I looked up at this temple, this teeny tiny temple in the distance, feeling disappointed, to be honest. We had really wanted to do something, the two of us, and it was too late in the day to do anything else. And Kat looked at me and she said, look, why don't you take my camera, you go up, and I'll experience it through the photos that you take. And that was not ideal, but we couldn't think of an alternate solution, so I took her camera, and just as I was about to set off, 2 men approached us. They were local Chinese men They didn't speak any English. Katrina and I didn't speak any Mandarin. And they started gesturing. And I said to Kat, I think they want to carry you up to the temple. And Kat looked at me and she said, it's 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and there are 1,000 stairs. There's no way they're going to make it to the top. And I said to her, probably not. But if you feel comfortable, we could try. And Kat did feel comfortable, and so we did try. This photo was taken on the very first step. This man carried Katrina, and the other man carried her wheelchair. And we set off one step after another. There were so many people at the Summer Palace that day. There were locals and tourists everywhere. And as we started to ascend the staircase, this remarkable thing happened. People started parting the way and cheering and crying. And they started to slow their pace to match our pace, which was glacial. And before I knew it, this spontaneous community had formed. All of a sudden, there were 20 people who were kind of just walking with us. Silently, we were just ascending this staircase. And after about 200 stairs, this man could not go on. He was dripping in sweat and heaving. I was genuinely very concerned for his welfare. And he put Katrina down on one of the stairs, and I sat down next to her and thought, what are we going to do? I can't get you up or down. And we sat there for a moment or two, and then out of nowhere, somebody else just stepped in and picked Katrina up and kept going. And after another 200 stairs, that man couldn't go on, and he put Katrina down. Somebody else stepped in, picked her up, and kept going. 5 people carried Katrina to the top of the temple that day. It took us hours and hours, and we arrived just as the sun was setting over the water. So if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from today, it's this. See who you can carry up the stairs. 1,000 stairs may seem daunting, but if you see an opportunity to help someone, to stand alongside them, to mentor them, to sponsor them, to encourage them, to be their cheerleader or advocate, take it. I am a total example of someone who has been carried up to the top of 1,000 stairs 1,000,000 times over. I have had the most wonderful parents. If they hadn't been so incredible, if my teacher, Miss Clark, hadn't been so kind and inclusive, if the woman in that change room hadn't been so generous, I don't think I'd be in this position today. And maybe you can't make it to the top of 1,000 stairs on your own. But if you start, other people will see what you're doing and they will join you, and together you can make it to the top of 1,000 stairs. I believe our success as people, as teams, as organisations begins with one act of kindness at a time. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Annabelle Williams.
I made myself cry. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the inspiration. You merited your seat. Once again, Ima, if I can sum up a little bit what Annabelle Williams said, that develop passion for sport since the very young age and having incredible support along the way. And when she were young, she used to searching the word disabled in dictionary. And her mom told her, it doesn't matter what is written in the book, the most important thing is growth mindset. Don't see yourself as a victim. I agree with you. So we can achieve so much more actually. And grandma used to told her about, you have to go to school. You cannot run away from the problem. And even her teacher have the ability to help, and she took it. So once again, never ever underestimate what you're capable of. Creating the culture of courage will actually create another courage. And congratulations once again for winning Australian most prestigious awards. And if you are passionate about something, make it happen. And together we can make it at the top of the success. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big applause for Annabelle Williams. If you notice, actually more than 5 times I've tried to whip my own tears. Many of you might be similar like me, right? And is it really inspiring success story about our speaker today? And next we come to the long-awaited part of today's event, the talk show season with the exciting topic of grit, unlocking your potential and let your true color shine. We are honored to have distinguished speakers joining us for this session. Please join me in inviting our speakers to come to the stage. Our first speaker is an Olympic gold medalist, lawyer, Vice President of Paralympic Australia, international motivation speaker, and TV commentator. Her unwavering dedication to the sport and remarkable performance have played a key role in raising awareness about parasport and the extraordinary ability of athletes with disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming back to the stage Miss Annabelle Williams.
A match.
And we have other speaker. For the second speaker, he's from Stanford University Graduate School of Business. He brings experience from previous roles at lecture partners and several bankers. He is currently a Chief Executive Officer at Mowilex Indonesia. Please give a warm welcome to Bapak Niko Safavi.
I think you're here.
And last but not least, he is recognized as a YouTuber and a member of the popular YouTube channel Skinny Indonesia 24. He is currently a content creator, the creator of the Polarisasi musical, and is well known for his humorous video, vlogs, and various online content. His influence and online presence have made him one of the most prominent figures in the Indonesian YouTube community, especially among the younger generation. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Andovi da Lopez. And this talk show will be guided by our amazing moderator. Before we invite her, allow me to quickly introduce her. She is a well-known national TV anchor and pioneer in Indonesia broadcast and media industry since 1990. Besides being a journalist, she loves photography and traveling, even writing a book called Romantic Journey, Notebook of a Traveler. She is currently a journalist at CNN Indonesia as a senior journalist and director of business development and hosts the daily show Inside with Desi Anwar. Ladies and gentlemen, Desi Anwar. So Desi Anwar, the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Didi. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Well, I could.
Yeah, let's hear a big kind of welcome to the Big Idea Forum. Actually, I have to say, I am so starstruck. I mean, after listening to Annabelle, isn't she such a marvelous storyteller? Don't you agree with me? I mean, you know, the way, and it's not just the stories, but the way she tells the stories. But what's most importantly, it starts making me reflect on just what it is we as human beings, you know, what we're doing today. What can we do to make an impact to our surrounding and to our society? And it's, for me, it's absolutely a big honor and pleasure to host this big idea forum. Now, normally I do these things in the studio, and everything is very sort of formal and stiff and very serious. But I find that in this kind of environment, and I think that this Museum MACAN, and thank you very much, Niko and Museum MACAN, for providing this forum. A big welcome, please. Because I think this is the kind of atmosphere that we need nowadays. I mean, the world is crazy out there, right? You agree, right? A lot of crazy things happening in the world. A lot of crazy things happening online. And for us to be able to create like an oasis that can really inspire and lift up our spirits, I think it's amazing. So once again, thank you, Annabelle Williams. We cannot thank you enough. And thank you, Niko, for creating and, you know, facilitating this incredible, you know, trip and journey that we're going to go through for the next hour. And this is a platform. It's called the Big Idea Forum, and it's actually a platform for us to not only to collaborate, but also to exchange ideas, and also for you also to ask questions, to give your perspectives, and we will have that opportunity at the end of the discussion. But I think for the moment, after listening, let's start with you, Niko. I mean, I'm sure you have your own journey as well. So everybody, every single one of us in this room, we have our own life journey, our own private challenges, our own sort of achievements and failures and feelings of being, you know, disappointed. But after listening to Annabelle, I mean, what resonates most from her stories? And, you know, perhaps how does that relate to you, you know, and your own private story after listening to her incredible, incredible experience?
I agree with you, Desi. It is introspective. When you hear the story, you think back about the events in your own life. I think about the events
Sorry,
in
is your microphone on?
Test. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So it is introspective in that after you hear the story, you begin to think about the stories in your life and all the times people helped you along the way. It doesn't matter how we define success. Success is actually happiness, nothing more than that at the end. And to reach that point, you don't get there alone. Somebody somewhere gives you a hand. Somebody somewhere inspires you. And to me, inspiration is actually a more powerful force than motivation. It seems to be more cognitive and more mental and more emotional. And you begin to search, and you begin to find those moments in your life where there was the man who carried your friend Kat on the shoulder. There were those people in my life, and some of them are here in this room. You know, and so that's what it made me do, at least. Yeah.
Could you perhaps tell us some of your own personal stories and the kind of, you know, Annabelle mentions about the pivotal moments. Yeah. You know, the moment when Todd, that horrible Todd Jackman, whatever his name is.
Nailed it.
You know, horrible to her. But then Miss Clark, you know, made her into a superhero. Could you perhaps share with us some of your little stories that actually made you the Niko that you are now?
So my family are immigrants into the U.S. We came in 1978 from Iran shortly before a revolution. And coming from a very privileged upbringing, we landed in sort of more modest life in the U.S. And at one point, I was in a very prestigious school, and then my father was going through financial crisis, and a couple of years later, I was in a public school for the first time in my life. Those of you who are old enough to remember, there was an old hostage crisis that was going on at the time.
That was back, what, 1979, wasn't it?
And so in 1980, I think it was, or 81, I was the kid from the country that had taken the hostages. So you become effectively the punching bag in the high school. You know, you're the kid that they bully. And I recall one particular day riding my bicycle back from school, and a car stopped full of other students, and they beat the hell out of me. And I came home, my mother saw my torn shirt, slightly bruised. What happened? I said, basically, I got jumped and I rolled into a ball. Best thing I could do. And this is where I am. I told the teacher in school, and I can't say it was quite as sort of powerful as your experience with your teacher, but Mrs. Morales, who taught English, came and said, it's okay, you know, you'll go through this. And just having an adult who spoke English, and my parents' English wasn't that good at the time, who could communicate with me and tell me that it was okay, that she would look out for me, and she had a son in the school as well, made a huge difference. You know, and then I found my passion in sports and soccer, and so I was very much welcomed by the soccer team, which back then in the US was all immigrant kids, but mostly Mexican. So, you know, group of oddballs, we found our commonality, and it was on those shoulders that I stood, and I was able to sort of crawl myself out of a very uncomfortable position, you know, being a little kid and still sort of being held responsible for what was going on at a global stage. I don't think that's changed very much even now, but you know, that was a landmark moment for me.
Yeah, but since then, I mean, well, Annabelle talked about, you know, the failures and disappointment and successes, and very quickly, over the years, as you're growing up, especially with the story, you've been feeling different, being bullied. How do you see failure, and how do you actually sort of, you know, they say it's not about the number of times that you get knocked down, it's the number of times that you actually try and get up from, you know, on the floor and try again. But what is it for you?
Well, and there are plenty of proverbs to that effect, that the road to success is paved with failure, fall 7 times, stand up 8. I think that one is from a Japanese proverb, but it's exactly that, and we talk about things like that at work. We tell our people to fail early and fail often, to get it out of the way as quickly as possible, to not punish people for outcomes that are bad when the action is appropriate, and not to conversely reward people for just being lucky. And anyone who's been an athlete knows that failure doesn't hurt when you try your best. It hurts when you don't do your best. Yeah. And victories don't taste as sweet unless they really hurt, and it takes a lot of effort. And that inspires me, and that inspires a lot of people, I think, who have the same mindset, that you can't be afraid of the failure, especially if you give it your all. It just won't hurt as much. Of course, no one likes to lose. But failure on the back of your best effort, I will take over other failure any day.
Andovi, I mean, you're younger than the rest of us. I mean, we have our young sort of students there at the back, and I would like to sort of involve you and get you to be part of the conversation as well. What resonates most with you with Annabelle's stories, and what lessons do you think?
Thank you so much. You know, this leadership series by Mowilex and Annabelle's story, it's such a privilege for me. Even though I'm on stage right now, I felt like I had like a 6 SKS like lesson in university listening to her story. So before that, please give it up for Annabelle. And for all the university students at the back, please make some noise. University students, make some noise. Yeah, that's right. Right. even though I'm technically 31, so I'm not that young, but yeah. And I heard that the university students, if you get to ask good questions today and the Q&A, you will get 1 free set of Pablo art paint by Mowilex. Yay! Yay, okay. I don't know, I was just making that up. There's no free
Now
set.
you're making things up.
Yeah. But yeah, like listening to her story, it just gave a different perspective on how like each of our own stories are different. And to see that she had such a support, in which I also had support from my brother. For those of you who know, I have a big brother named Joe, who did Skinny Indonesian 24 with me. And I had people that trusted me in the beginning, even though when I made YouTube in the beginning, people laughed at me, especially coming from FAUI, from the University of Indonesia. Back in the day when you made YouTube videos, my seniors came up to me and said, Andovi, what are you doing? You're in the most prestigious law university in Indonesia. Why are you making stupid videos online? And now everybody makes stupid videos online, right? So you just really never know, but the support, that the stories that you told, and your teachers, your friends, and forget the Todd Jackmans of the world, right? Todd Jackman, right? Yeah, Todd Jackman, ew.
I bet he never won any medal, right?
Right. But like listening to her story, just, it just gave a new perspective on how the failures the quote unquote failures in your life, it's just another thing that you just have to let go of. And yeah, especially for the young students over here, whatever you're doing, a lot of people are gonna tell you no, just like how had that executive in that TV room. A lot of them said no, except that one person. And I hope you can find that one person in your life that really said, you can do it. And I had in mind the form of my parents, my brother, who always believed in me. But yeah, thank you so much for that story. I feel like I should still be sitting there listening to this. Like, thank you. Give it up one more time for Annabelle. Thank you so much. It's amazing.
Annabelle, I mean, we've got a lot of young people there at the back, and learning from your amazing journey, your failures that are actually not failures, but they just delayed successes, and that actually make the success a much more sort of, much sweeter, a much better experience. Now, when we talk about the young people nowadays, especially the Generation Z and our Generation Alpha, and there are these sort of adjectives that go with them, young people nowadays, they lack grit. They lack focus. They have very short attention span. They know what they want. They get bored easily, and so on and so forth. And I'd just like to, just for the benefits of our students there at the back, from your sort of experience, I mean, you are the epitome of, even most of us cannot even do like a fifth of what you and your team has done, winning that gold medal. I mean, it's amazing. I was like in tears watching it. But what sort of lessons and what are the things that you can, share with our young friends on how to deal with life that, to be honest, it's full of distractions. We are completely, constantly bombarded with so much stimulation. We are at the mercy of our gadgets. We're addicted to our technology. We don't even know how to communicate properly because of just the kind of, technology that rules our lives. Give us some advice.
Hello. Yes. Okay, so first of all, in terms of how, this is on, you guys.
Maybe, can we turn up a little bit the volume? Try again, or maybe closer to your mouth.
Oh, so many options. Hello. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, what I'd say about that is, I've heard those things about this the young generation as well. And in my experience, generalizations are not true. So ignore generalizations. You don't have to listen to that.
Yeah.
The best thing that each of you can be is you. And I'll elaborate on what I mean. I spent a lot of my youth constantly trying to achieve. And as an adult, I reflected and I thought, why was that? I was very driven to achieve at school. I was very driven to achieve in sport, in music, in every aspect of my life. And I got to the point where I realised, am I doing all of these things because I actually want to do them and enjoy them, or am I doing it because I feel like I have to? And when I reflected, I thought, I think I've spent a lot of my life feeling like I need to prove to everybody that having one arm isn't a limitation for me, and look at all of these achievements I can do and all of these things that I can do. And I have loved a lot of them, but also it has been exhausting at times. And sort of about 15 years ago, I had to sit and think, what do I actually want to do with my life? What matters to me? You know, what are my values and what do I stand for? And I became much more deliberate about the things I put time and energy into. I mean, 24 hours is a lot of time. And what's the 24 hours a day? That's a lot of time in a day. And there's some expression about, give a busy person something to do and it'll get done. And I think if that was in my early 20s, and I sort of sat down and I reflected, I asked myself the question, who am I? What are my values? What do I stand for and what do I want to do? And then I put short, medium and long-term goals in place to make sure I achieved them. So there are a million more ways to be distracted now than there was when I was young, but only if you allow those things to distract you. You're the only you're the only person who can control those things. So my advice would be as deliberate as you possibly can about what you want to achieve, and don't underestimate. I mean, it's back to what I said in my talk. Do not underestimate what you are capable of. I find, and it's not just young people these days, it's young people generally. They think, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh, I'm too young, or it's too hard or impossible. I mean, you are a perfect example of what can be achieved when, it was an industry that didn't exist. You created it here. And you guys have the capacity to do that as well.
Okay. And there is a sentence that you mentioned that I am particularly interested in. It's about failure. Really, how is that your failure is ultimately what defines you, and how you deal with your failure. This is, coming to what I was asking you about, how people deal with failure. Now, what we see, maybe because also the effect of social media, what is rising in the world now is a case of mental health issues. Depression is on the rise. I mean, suicide is on the rise. And young people are finding themselves unable to recover from their disappointment. And what we call, they're easily brittle, they're vulnerable. They don't have that sort of the grit, like just grin and bear it. But this is becoming a global phenomenon, is mental. What is the best way? I mean, not just in your experience, but the kind of tools that you can develop to have this grit, to be able to deal with failures as it's not like the end of the world kind of thing, which is becoming a phenomenon.
So a couple of very, very practical things that I've done in my life. I guess before I go into the practical things, what I'd say about failure, and it's a total cliche, but it is absolutely true, failures are the best opportunity for growth. You can't grow unless you've failed, basically. And bouncing back after failure, that's the definition of resilience. Resilience is how quickly you bounce back after a challenge. And in the past, I used to get asked to speak about resilience, and I have heard other speakers talk about resilience, and their message is, you've got to be resilient, you can do it, you've got to toughen up and be resilient. And I remember thinking, that's not really going to help anybody. What is it that makes people resilient? And so I think and this is why I speak so much about kindness and inclusion, if you want people to bounce back after a challenge or a failure, the best way for them to do that, if they're surrounded by an inclusive, kind, supportive community, because they'll feel like they're not alone and that they can overcome a challenge. So I think that that's one really crucial thing. But I guess two very practical things that I've done. I've had so many failures. I've had so many, I won 1 gold medal. I was on the Australian team for nearly 10 years. I lost so many more times than I won. And I think it is very important, first of all, not to skip over the feelings you have when you fail. Like, it's important to feel sad, hurt, upset, disappointed. Moving through those emotions is a very important thing, but trying not to allow it to totally consume you. And what I used to do, I used to put, these are two very practical things that I did. If I was feeling gutted by something, I would put time in my calendar to dwell on it. I would make myself a calendar entry in my digital calendar. I'd say from 2 to 3 p.m. on Tuesday, I'm going to think about how disappointed and how devastated I am by that. And outside of that time, I'm not going to think about it again. You've just got to be really deliberate, and otherwise things can become overwhelming and all-consuming. And the other thing that's helped me a lot is what I call my catastrophe scale. So whenever I have something, a disappointment, a failure, something that's gone wrong, I think to myself, where does this fall on my catastrophe scale? And the scale is from 0 to 100. 0 would be something like spilling a glass of water. I mean, kind of annoying, but no big deal. And 100 would be something like being diagnosed with a terminal illness or losing a loved one or something like that. And so every time I face a failure or a challenge, I think, where does this lie? And the reality is most things that we think are terrible, awful things are actually pretty low down on the catastrophe scale. And that always gives me a lot of perspective.
Perspective is important. When you came forth, where did it come from? Scale of 0 to 100? How?
At that point in time, I had never used my catastrophe scale.
Well, then looking back.
Yes, at the time I thought it was 100. No, on reflection it was, to be honest,
Yeah.
probably 0, because I wouldn't have gone on to London. To be honest, if I hadn't lost that race, I would have retired. And I never would have gone to London. I never would have won that relay. Every single time I failed, it's ultimately led to something much better.
Oh yeah, well that's great. There's a big hand to that. So time does heal things. Perspective does work. And things that we consider kind of catastrophic now, 20 years on, it could be one of the best moments in our lives. Niko, tell us. I mean, your journey as a CEO, managing people, managing company, you must have gone through ups and downs. Any recipes when, number one, it's dealing with mistakes, especially it's with your own mistakes, because it's always worse dealing with your own mistakes. And also the tools that you need in order to rectify, plus the ability to see that it's not a mistake, because it's actually a learning lesson that you can actually use it to step onto the next ladder in your evolution.
One of the key things in managing a company is to, on a regular basis, experience disappointment, failure within the organization, in the marketplace. It happens. You can't hide from it. You have to embrace it, and like you said, use it as a learning opportunity so that we don't repeat the mistake, and we figure out how we can avoid it in the future in, sort of in a systematic way, as opposed to one individual inheriting or embracing a particular concept. It has to become institutionalized. And that requires lessons and teaching and sort of explaining by leaders in a company, by leaders in an organization to its people as to how we took an opportunity that was negative and turned it into an opportunity for learning. The pain doesn't go away. You feel it. I mean, that's normal. But one of the key components to make that happen is forgiveness. I think if managers are incapable of forgiving the mistakes of their subordinates, then the subordinates will not confront the issue as readily. And so I think of who can forgive. It's embedded in the word. It's people who can give. You have to have power and authority and generosity before you can forgive. And with that forgiveness comes the lesson, I think. I don't think those things are detached. And fear, both on the culprit, if you will, side, as well as the evaluator's side, affects whether you can confront your mistakes and failures, and whether you can then, as a leader, turn them into learning opportunities. Without forgiveness, you can't get to that step, because, and if you're competing against yourself, it's forgiving yourself sometimes. You know, I'm going to overlook what I did. And
as you get older, do you find that forgiving yourself or things like failures or successes and disappointments, are they sort of kind of watered down in terms of the scale from 0 to 100? It's lessons with age and wisdom?
I don't know if it's wisdom, but you get calloused more. So, it just hurts less and less. But to pivot it back to young people today, you know, I don't think they need to see themselves as being in a generation that doesn't have opportunities. The young generation are the same people that have given us advancements in technology. They're the same generation who have inspired movements that have caused companies and countries to change legislation and how you look at the environment and how you look at social issues. So young people actually do have tremendous amount of power, and as much as social media can be a distraction, it can also be a vehicle to trigger change for the positive. So then jumping back to your other point, yeah, it hurts less when you get older. And whether it's heartbreak or failure at the workplace, when you're young, it hurts. It's normal.
Do you still experience failures now or mistakes? Do you still, does it hurt as much, or do you think, nah, it's just one of those things? It's just one on the scale of catastrophe.
I definitely, is it working?
Yes.
Okay. I definitely experience failure now. I'm trying to think. Sorry, can you? Is the question, does it hurt less?
Yes, because, you know, when you're young, things just seem, you know, it's all consuming. You know, somebody says something nasty about, you know, the way you look, and then you think about it, you know, for a week, and then, you know, you don't want to go to school, and then so. But, you know, how do you approach the kind of setbacks?
Now, I think I'm just so aware that it will be fine. You know, I guess I do a lot of corporate speaking. I travel a lot to speak at conferences. And I kind of started doing that in the middle of 2019. And I thought, oh, well, international travel and large conferences are never going to go anywhere. So this is this great business model I have. And then, of course, 6 months later, I remember sitting in my lounge room watching the television as COVID was announced, and no travel, no conferences. And I remember, and that felt like, oh my gosh, you know, I had been this mergers and acquisitions lawyer, you know, and now I'm sitting on my lounge room floor and every single one of my engagements has just been cancelled and I don't know what I'm going to do. So that was a recent example of where I felt like I'd failed. But I remember clearly sitting on the floor. I had my oldest, I've got 2 daughters. My oldest daughter was 1.5, I think. And I remember looking at her and I remember just thinking, it will be fine. You know, I have no idea how it's going to be fine, but I've had enough experience of things not going well to know that there's a path forward. And I think that is a very important lesson that I've learned. In challenging times, even if you don't know what the path is, take comfort in knowing that there is a path and you will find it. And you don't have to find it straight away. It doesn't have to be something that's immediate. You just take it one step at a time and you will find a path through.
Yeah. Andovi, what about the young people? What is it? What constitutes failures and successes for the young nowadays? And how do you see, I mean, you're young, but I mean, we have younger students out there. You know, for example, the milestones. We talk about milestones, you know, oh, you go to school, you do well, you pass your exam, and then you go to university, and then after that you get a good job, and then you get a promotion and pay rise and so forth. Well, somehow those traditional sort of path to success and the grading system has changed now, right? I mean, success is like how many likes you get every time you post, how many thumbs up, and then if you get thumbs down, you start thinking, wow, it's the end of the world, or maybe somebody, bullies you online. It's just so many different, definitions of what we call successes and failures. Tell us about some of them and how do you deal with them?
I mean, I would argue that because of social media and the rise of Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, young kids nowadays, again, not all, I'm not generalizing, they have a very warped perception of success. Contextually, I grew up with the early days of YouTube, and Instagram just became from pictures to videos and all that stuff. But I honestly think because of what you guys see online, the young kids nowadays think all that success is like, oh, everybody is successful. Everything is instantaneous. Oh my God, Andovi makes these videos with all these YouTubers. Oh, look at them. What people don't know is it took me 5 years to make my first money from YouTube AdSense. It's just that because of the things that we have on our phones right now, we have such a warped perception of what success is like. The followers you get, the likes you get, the millions of views, the hundreds of thousands of views, and it never stops. For me as well, before when I got 10,000 views, I was very happy. Oh my God, 10,000 people watch my videos, yay! And as you grow bigger, you get 10,000, you feel like it's a failure. So the barometer of success always levels up as you go higher and higher. But I just want to say something to the young generation nowadays. It's like, I pity the young generation nowadays because they grew up in middle school and high school with Instagram and TikTok. I mean, when I was growing up, I was compared to the smartest kid in my neighborhood. Only orang paling pintar di RT, the smartest guy or girl in my RT, rumah tangga. I don't know how to explain this in English. But you always get compared to the people in your neighbors. And now the young kids nowadays, you can be the smartest kid in ITB or UI, and then you see, oh my God, look at this kid from Stanford who's much smarter than I am. So the way their brain is wired it's so different. And you're right, it depends on how we use the tool of social media. And it's counterintuitive for me to say it because my business is social media. And I'm not saying you guys should go on a toxic cool down, go to Bali for 1 week, don't look at your social media. I'm not saying that, but there needs to be either a self-regulating part on the use of social media, just like how Australia is doing it with the young kids. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? There's a regulating where young kids cannot use their cell phones in school. And I mean, it's a very complex topic, but I truly believe if your young students nowadays really regulate your time on social media. Like
how do you regulate? Do you regulate? Do you have...
I give a challenge to all of you. Not only the young kids, even the older people here. I bet you, all of you, when you wake up, this is you, the alarm, you get your phones and you scroll on Instagram and TikTok. Don't lie to me. I do that as well. But what I do is, for the first 30 minutes when I wake up, I try not to look at my phone at all. I work out, I go to the bathroom, do my business, whatever. Just don't look at... That's a very practical advice, by the way. And the same thing before you go to sleep. Before you go to sleep, if you have your phones in your room, everyone knows you're gonna scroll on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. So I do a very practical advice where I just don't bring my phone. I don't bring my phone. I try to read a book. I try to go to sleep. I mean, it's become such a thing. And you're right, it's a tool. You need to use it wisely. And you need to put systems in place to remind yourself that your phone is not everything. But that's what I try my best to do. And I encourage all of you young people here and the old people to not open your phones the first 30 minutes when you wake up. It's hard, but I try to do that, to put a system in my life.
It's hard because now we measure our success through validation.
Exactly.
Through people's eyes.
Exactly.
And our emotions basically, we're just like buttons that other people push, right?
Right.
You know.
I was just going to add, I think the other thing that's very important, and I know you will have heard this, but I can give you a personal example from this week. It's so important to remember that social media is really just a highlight reel of people's lives. It certainly does not tell their whole story. And I think people hear that, but they think, I think people in theory understand that, but they still look at social media and think, oh, look at all these amazing things this person's doing. They have a better life than I do. And, or look at all the wonderful things they're up to. And an example this week for me, I've come from Bangkok and I spoke at a wonderful conference there and had an incredible time and now I'm so privileged to be here. And all these people from Australia, friends, are reaching out saying, oh my goodness, look at your, where you are and what you're doing. And this has actually been, and this is very personal and I'm going to try very hard not to cry, but this has probably been the most difficult week of my life personally. I found out on Monday that my dad is very sick and I'm really not intending to cry. But I don't want to share that on social media. But my social media this week looks like I've had the best week ever, and I have in so many respects. But it's also been a very challenging week. So it is really important to remember that social media is literally a highlight reel of people's lives.
Do you let your children play?
My children use social media?
Social media?
My children, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Okay.
So they're very little. And to be honest, we do very little screen time. Every so often they'll watch a show called Bluey. I don't know if anyone here knows Bluey.
Yes.
It's an Australian show. I understand that people are developing Australian accents all around the world, which I'm sorry for. So my kids watch Bluey every few days for about half an hour, but they don't use YouTube or anything like that. And to be honest, we're trying very hard. There's so many gadgets and things out there. Even my oldest daughter absolutely loves reading. And, now there's things where you can put a card in a speaker box and it tells you audio books and things. We're even not avoiding them, but because she's so happy to pick up a book and read it, we're trying to just sort of stick with that for as long as possible. But what you were referring to is, in Australia, we have increased the age limit for social media. And there is a real movement now to ban smartphones in schools. And for parents to give their, I don't think they call them dumb phones, but, Nokia 3310s and things. Kids are mostly going to school with phones that don't have internet at all, just so they can be contactable, but not access social media or the internet.
Yeah, I think we should start doing that here in Indonesia. Niko, your thoughts on...
I'm not sure I'm quite an expert on social media because my social media success is 0.
Well, you're from a different generation.
Yeah,
what about your children? What about
exactly. But on the concept of fear of future and anxiety, I see anxiety about the future as being no different than being plagued or gripped by failures of the past, except they're failures that may or may not happen in the future. So, the memories of the past, they're learning lessons, they're things that sometimes hold you back, they make you apprehensive about taking on a challenge. But all the things you're worrying about in the future actually haven't happened yet. You're today, you're now. This is the time that you can take action. So, you can be plagued by the future as much as you can be plagued by the memories of your failures or shortcomings or mistakes of the past. You can't let that future haunt you the way the past has. That's all unwritten books. Those are all blank pieces of paper that you have to fill out. And you decide what to put on those pages.
Annabelle, look, our themes, let your true colors shine. And, you're a Paralympic swimming champion. You have talent. Let's go back to when we talk about, just be yourself. Now, the problem is, especially when I was young, I didn't know what I want to be. And you said, just go in there and follow your passion. I said, what passion? So, and I see that a lot with young people, because particularly my young relatives, they sort of go through life, they sort of do things, they dabble, and yet, it's not as easy as it sounds, is it? Just tap into yourself and find that hidden talent or chase after when actually most of us, we're not great swimmers, or we don't, we're not sort of Olympians. But do you believe that everybody has that kernel of something that can actually be developed into something that makes you a champion in one way or the other? Maybe not, a world champion, but at least in your own little family or community.
Yes, and
how to find it?
I think it's not necessarily the case that everybody's passion or the thing they love will be something that they can turn into a career. For some people, their job is their job, and they earn a living and they need to have a job, and that's what it is, and they can find joy with colleagues and people around them, but it's not their true passion. For some people, it's a hobby or travel or reading, but I think everybody has a passion, and I think finding it is very important. I mean, in terms of, and I probably sound a bit like a broken record, but in my experience, the best way to unleash or unlock your potential is by trying a million different things. I mean, when I was young, I didn't focus on swimming solely until I was about 14. I played tennis, I played netball, which I don't think is a sport that's played much here. I played basketball for a while. I did horse riding, I did debating, I played the trumpet. I had a million different things going on, and the exposure to all of those things gave me the ability to find the thing I was very passionate about. And so I guess, my message, it's not just to young people. I think at any age you can find a new passion. Is to expose yourself to a lot of different opportunities, take up opportunities. I know, life is so busy. Often you think, I can't, I don't have time to do this, or I can't possibly pick up a new hobby. I mean, I always used to love reading, and then I went to law school and I had to read all the time, and I sort of fell out of love with reading. And more recently I've joined a book club and I've fallen back in love with reading. So there's timing as well. There's moments in time where something is possible, and it's possible to pursue a new passion or to start one that you'd lost years ago, and leaning into that is really important. And I know time is such a time is probably the commodity that's the hardest to find. I actually remember even when I was at Stanford, it was this 6-week program that both Niko and I did at different times, but it gave you an opportunity to be away from your, real life for 6 weeks. And it was incredible. All the people I'd spoken to, most of whom were in their 40s and 50s. I remember one man was the CFO of a big bank, and he said, I used to love playing soccer, and I haven't played in 30 years because I had kids and my job and this and that. And he started again at Stanford, and now it's been 5 years since we were at Stanford, and he's played continuously since then. So it's never too late. It's never too early. There might be times where you have to dip in and out of things, but always leave space for the things that you find personally fulfilling, because it will make you better in your job, for your family, and in every respect.
But why did you choose swimming at 14? What was it?
I think swimming chose me. To be honest, I loved, so this is the story, I loved athletics. I loved running. My mum was an incredible runner. She should have gone to the Olympics for hurdles, but she got an injury right before the games. And I just wanted to be like my mum. So I did a lot of running when I was very young. And then I got injured when I was 13. I developed stress fractures in both of my shins. And I was, they said, don't run for 6 months. And I totally ignored that advice and kept running. And so my injury got worse and worse, to the point where I completely had to stop walking for a period of time. And during that period, I started swimming as part of my rehabilitation. And it was a teacher at school who said to me, you know what, I think you're actually a better swimmer than a runner, which I didn't really like the idea of, because it wasn't very social, having your head in the water the whole time. With running, I could chat to my friends. But, after 6 months, I competed in my first competition. And even though I didn't love the training for swimming, I realised I loved competing in swimming and I could do well. And so I never really looked back. I never went back to athletics. So it was, actually through injury and seeing the silver lining, I guess, in the injury. I felt very devastated that I couldn't run, but the silver lining was that I could swim, and then actually that ended up being this golden opportunity.
But then you put your time into it. I mean, how many hours of swimming every day to become a champion? It's not like, oh yes, I have a natural talent, I can daydream for 8 hours of my gold medal and then find out that, oops, I'm like number 4. So you had to put in the time.
Yes.
You had to
so
focus.
at my peak, which was, I guess for about 15 years of my life, I trained 9 times a week. And every session, the squad that I was in, we had to swim 9 kilometres a session to be in that squad. So I trained every morning and every afternoon. So I swam nearly 20 kilometres a day, most days. I had Wednesday mornings off, which felt always like this incredible holiday. Wow. And then also I did gym sessions 3 times a week, and then sports psychologists and, physiotherapy and all sorts of different things. So
it's
it was a
exhausting
huge
just
commitment.
listening to it. Andovi, would you be
I
prepared
would
to spend
completely
that
give up.
kind of...
I would give up completely once I know 20 kilometers per day swimming.
I mean, it's commitment.
Wow. That is, I give up the first day if I hear that.
Niko, do you have it in you to be a champion? I mean, would you be willing to sort of go through all the rigor?
One of my experiences that I've run a few marathons, not at championship level, not in any shape or form that would place me in any kind of a ranking, but we were talking about this last night. The first time I was going to run one, I was quite nervous. Do I have the athletic capability to do something like this? And one of my colleagues said, just go stand at the finish line of a marathon and see the kind of people that are able to cross it. Various ages, various body shapes, various capabilities, and you see all kinds of people cross it. And you realize it's a mental exercise more so than it is a physical exercise. So nowhere near Annabelle's capabilities, of course, but it was a challenge. It was my personal challenge, so I was able to do it within my reach, and that was good enough for me.
Okay, well, no, it's good. I'm your cheerleader. I will be there cheering you on. But okay, let's give you a chance to ask our panelists questions. Please put your hands up and state your name and where you're from, and let the microphone find you.
Name, age, where you're from, and status.
And who would you like to answer your questions? Perhaps actually, why don't you make a little beeline here at the front, those who want to. Let's have three of you. Let's take 3 questions at a time. That way.
There's one that stood up already.
Yeah, silakan.
Check. Is the mic working?
Maybe somebody can help with the microphone.
Thank you so much for the opportunities that given. Also, thank you for the really insightful sharing session and talk show. My name is Fenida Ramadhani. I'm from University of Indonesia, and I have some questions. My first question is special for Miss Anna. You said before that you are someone that have a really big ambition in yourself, and you ever feel exhausted with that. So my question is, what is exactly the difference between a healthy growth mindset and the ambition that pushes us too far? And for the second question, I have a question for Mr. Niko and Kak Jovi.
Kak Jovi is my big brother, but thank you. Thank you, but it's okay. I get it a lot.
Sorry.
It's okay. Padahal gue anak UI loh, parah banget sumpah. Gue anak UI loh, wow.
I mean Kak Andovi. No, I'm sorry. I mean Kak Andovi. My question is, what are the biggest challenge in implemented the growth mindset in professional system, especially when we should working with the people that have a different mindset with us?
Okay.
That's our farming.
All
Thank
right.
you.
What was your name again?
Fanny.
Feni.
Annabelle.
the difference between the growth mindset and, I guess, the non-growth mindset, the fixed mindset. You know?
That's the question, the difference between the growth mindset and fixed mindset?
Yeah, and like somehow we are to pushes ourselves too hard. So is it like, what is the difference between we have a growth mindset and ambition that pushes us too hard? Like exactly the difference.
When you feel like you've been pushed too hard?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So the definition of a growth mindset is effort and hard work and support from other people. You can achieve more than you thought. I think, first of all, it's important to realise that nobody is born with a growth mindset. It's something that everyone can work on. And I guess, well, that's a very good question. I imagine, well, in my experience, I always had support from my parents. I think in terms of the support aspect of growth mindset, it's important to know that you don't have to be born into support and you don't need to have lots and lots of support. You just need one person to support you, and you can find that support, you know? You can find that support in many, many different ways. And hard work and effort, well, you've just kind of got to grit your way through that. And grit, the definition of grit is perseverance, passion and perseverance for a long-term goal. And that's one of the things I think, you know, people often think with hard work, oh, well, I've worked really hard for a short period of time, so why hasn't my effort paid off? You've got to work hard for a long time. That's one of the things. And then, so I guess that's the healthy part of a growth mindset. When you feel like it's too much is usually when you feel like you're overwhelmed or there's an overwhelming amount of pressure to perform, either by the people who are meant to support you or you're putting too much pressure on yourself. And then it's just a matter, to be honest, it's a matter of constantly recalibrating. Where am I now? Do I feel like I'm achieving my goals in the way that feels good to me, or does this feel overwhelming? Do I feel like there's way too much pressure? Do I feel like in some way this is unhealthy, and do I need to reach out for help because of that? And checking in with yourself on a regular basis to make sure that it's not too overwhelming and crushing.
Okay, that's great. Niko, how do you deal with people without the growth?
Yeah, with the growth mindset in the workplace and how it's systematized. I think concepts that are easy to explain and difficult to implement. First and foremost, I think growth mindset in a company begins with having a sense of purpose. Why are we here? What are we trying to do? What is our vision and mission? What do we want to achieve? Secondly, investment in people, learning, systems, commitment to improvement, continuous improvement. Now, all of these are concepts that have been well explored by many companies. Every company tries to do these things. The challenge is more in implementation and execution of these things. I think on a personal level, these things are more emotional, more complicated. On a commercial level, they're well studied, well explored, because every business wants to grow and sort of inspire its people to do its best. The execution is really the toughest part.
Would you say that you yourself have a growth mindset, Niko?
I don't know. I think others.
You nurtured, or did you develop it?
I hope I do, but I think others would have to be the judge as to whether I do or not. I think of myself as a person that does that. I'm inquisitive. I want to learn. Our director of R&D is there, and she knows I bug her more than anyone. She's also my instructor because I want to learn about things that I don't know anything about. So if that sort of creates or makes me a follower of a growth mindset, then I'm that. But really, other people have to judge as to whether I'm able to achieve that growth or not.
Well, I think you are. I mean, just having this forum shows that you're open to new ideas and you're open to new experience and you're willing to listen. It doesn't have to be from people from your own industry and your expertise. We can all learn something from everybody and anybody. I think I've interviewed so many people, and each time I always find that it's an opportunity for me to also learn new things. Andovi.
Specifically with Feni, when you're in UI, you're going to naturally incline, and when you meet every single different types of human beings in your university, I truly believe that these minds converge, and you're going to meet people with the same mindset as you. Because she asked about how do you find the system? How do you find people with the same mindset as you? How do you deal with it differently? You know, I really do hope that you take your time in UI to get to know as many people as possible in UI. Talk to your friends, talk to people outside of your circle, and you're gonna somehow connect and attract those who have the same mindset as you. So yeah, to Fanny, keep on talking to different kind of people in UI. And Fanny, because of that question, you get 1 free ticket to Museum MACAN for 1 year.
Okay.
She's mad. She's like, no. No free tickets. No free tickets. No free tickets.
Okay, let's have, our time's almost out. Let's have 2 more questions. It's very quick questions. And we have some hands, please. Anybody else? Okay, we have a young man there. And then maybe one more. Let's take both questions at the same time. That way we save a little bit of time. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Steven. I'm from Universitas Tarumanegara, and I'm truly grateful to have the chance to be able to ask this question to you. So this is for Miss Annabelle Williams. So from what I see is that as humans, we are truly fragile, and a simple accident could lead to a big injury. And as for me, I was diagnosed with a knee and a spinal injury just last year, in which I need a medical treatment in the near future. And because of that, now I'm limited with the number of activities that I could do, whereas before I could truly be free to do whatever I want. And for you, that you were born with the condition that limits you to do various activities. This meant that growing up, you had to overcome the difference you had with others. What are the steps you have to take to be able to achieve the growth mindset that you have now? And and do you have any advice for us young people in achieving a growth mindset in life? Thank you.
Okay, so what are the steps? Okay, let's have one more question before Annabelle answers. Anybody else?
One more question.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, there's one. Let's have a microphone.
And the last question gets 1 free Pablo art paint for a year? No? Okay. I was.
Or you can be a star in Andovi's YouTube.
Wait, where's the question?
All right, we have a question.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing about technology. It's not the most reliable thing. Things never work when they're supposed to work. But the show must go on, I guess. And it will be all right tonight. Yes, finally.
Sorry.
Please introduce yourself. Keep
One
your questions
from old man.
What? From who?
Old man.
No, you are young man, sir. You are young man.
You're not very old, trust me.
Okay, just talking about the growth mindset. In my opinion, a simple, what we call definition is how to challenge your comfort zone, I think. And knowing your very long journey, Annabelle, my question is, what do you have in mind? Or in other words, ever you think after the long journey of your career and life, how you want to be remembered by the world or people at the end of your career or life? Thank you.
That's a great question. I think it's also a great way to wrap up the sessions. Tools, please, for the young people on how to achieve growth mindsets, and then how would you like to be? What sort of legacy would you like to leave, and how do you want to be remembered?
To the first gentleman, thank you so much for sharing your journey and experience, and it sounds like you've been through a lot in the last year or two. Perhaps I will also answer this, I'll speak to the steps that I've felt, but I have had the privilege of attending the last couple or few Olympics and Paralympics as a broadcaster. And at the most recent Paralympic Games in Paris, I interviewed a lot of athletes who had acquired their disability during their life. They weren't born like that, they'd acquired their disability. And I spoke to some of the most incredibly growth-minded people I've met. One woman I interviewed was the a survivor of incredibly horrific domestic violence. She'd become a quadriplegic and she'd lost her eye. And she went on to win a medal at the Paralympic Games. And I interviewed her and I said, you know, with what you've been through, you know, you would be forgiven, or most people would not have overcome their situation in the way you have and then gone on to become this high-performing athlete. And I remember she said to me, well, I wallowed in self-pity for a period of time and that was miserable. So I just became very determined every day to get out of bed, have a shower, get dressed, go out the front door and begin my day. And she said, I didn't allow myself to think too far ahead of time because it felt overwhelming and I didn't know what the future held. But day by day, she felt stronger. And I guess that's my experience as well. It's not the case that you have to have it all sorted or solved, and you're probably still coming to terms with your accident. But every day, if you can just do simple things to get the day going and step outside your comfort zone in some way, decide what you want to do with your life and take small incremental steps to making that happen, then before you know it, you'll look back and think, wow, look at this growth that I've had. And that's kind of that bird's eye view thing. You know, take every single day, one step at a time, but just carry on, keep going. And then at some point down the track, look back and you'll think, wow, look at the incredible journey I've been on. So that's my advice, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
And to the other gentleman, in terms of my legacy, I mean, I realise I've had jobs in lots of different areas and I've been a Paralympian and things like that. But to be honest, the thing that matters most to me, you know, when I reflect on my life is just, I hope people think I was kind to them. And I stood up for people. And I stood up for causes that I believed about. And I stood, I guess, primarily alongside people who really needed me to. That's how I'd like to be remembered.
That's lovely. Okay, well, we've come to an end, but I'd like each of our panelists to answer this, let your true colors shine. What does it mean to you when we say let your true colors shine?
I think when we talk about letting our true colors shine is despite all the adversities and failures in our life, we each have our own journeys, we each have our own timeline and path. And when you become true to yourself, it's like what you said, you are going to automatically let your true color shine. But the one thing that I really want, today we learn a lot about people and the surrounding, helping each of our journeys, right? In order to let our true color shine, whether it was your teacher, your friends, your whatever. And I think we have a great opportunity now, and I just want to remind, we can let other people's true color shine by, again, donating to Rawinala. I mean, you know, you can just talk the talk, but we need to, you know, walk the walk as well, right? We can help let the people from Rawinala let their true color shine, so nobody can leave this room before donating anything, okay? That is a mandate. Except for the university students, yeah, I give them a bit. But the people in front, you gotta donate, okay? So that's my thing. Let other people help. It's our chance to let other people's true color shine, especially with a donation to Rawinala.
Yeah, take that opportunity to carry somebody else. I love that story with your friend Kat. Niko, let your true colors shine, your definition.
I'm going to go to a character from a book that I think it's over 500 years old, Don Quixote of La Mancha. I think his sidekick is Sancho Panza, and he says, I know who I am. And he was, in the book at least, he's characterized as the idiot, if you will. But if you know who you are, then your true colors can shine. And finding yourself, finding the things that make you you, and then choosing to improve where you can improve and accepting the things that you cannot change about yourself and live with them, that's how you shine.
Annabelle.
I mean, this is not unique. It's basically exactly what you guys said, but, you know, be totally yourself, unforgivingly yourself, and not the person that other people expect you to be. Just, yeah, find who you are and be incredibly deliberate and mindful about staying totally true to yourself.
Okay, big hands please for our speakers. Niko, Andovi and Annabelle, thank you so much. It's been enlightening, it's been a journey, and I have to say this is one of the favorite discussions that I've held, and I've held so many discussions, because we learn so much. And to be inspired, to be amongst inspirational people, these are the things that make us happy. I mean, as humans, it doesn't take much to make us happy. Kindness makes us happy. Smiles makes us happy. And listening to stories and overcoming, whether it's mistakes, failures, or disappointments, these are all the things that we can identify with. Once again, Niko, thank you so much. Andovi and Annabelle, thank you so much. We look forward to having you come back to Indonesia. This was the home that you once lived in, and there's always a place for you here in Indonesia, Annabelle. That's all, the Big Idea Forum. And thank you so much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. I would now like to return the event to our MC. Mbak Didi, silakan.